surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion.
Now, since I talked about the Left Behind movies, it was suggested from commenters that I should go after PureFlix, who now goes by the name Pinnacle Peak Pictures, and more specifically the God's Not Dead series, from a movie that came out about 10 years ago, and people still talk about how bad it is. Heck, I'm one of them. Now here's the thing. Am I against Christian movies? No, just the bad ones. You want an example of a good, inspiring Christian movie that came out rather recently? American Underdog, the movie about Kurt Warner. You cannot make a biopic about him without addressing his faith and his spiritual beliefs. But it also told his struggle to success story, which is the sole reason you go to see it, especially if you're a football fan or if you're someone who rooted for the teams he played on. PureFlix, aka Pinnacle Peak Pictures, the good old Triple P, is clearly known to make and distribute films for a specific Christian audience. They pretty much know that despite many of the films being critically panned by secular audiences, and even many Christians, that their core audience will eat it up like Lizzo eats cheeseburgers. And it's mainly due to one trope, the Christian persecution complex, which is something that many evangelical Christians believe is happening, especially in the United States. Now, are there horrible acts of Christian persecution still happening around the globe, especially in Asia and African countries? Absolutely, but not in the United States, not even close. And the cases that one can bring up are nothing like the stories these movies present, which they claim were based and inspired by real-life events. And we're going to get to that. Now, I remember when this first movie came out, it had enough notoriety at the movie theaters, and there were quite a few people in my church that were even saying, yeah, everyone needs to see this movie. This movie is speaking the truth. And one must also think, how many churches across America and how many private Christian schools had screenings of this movie, much like my middle school did for Left Behind back in 2001. And for all of those screenings, how many of those watching were younger kids having to watch against their will? And again, what's this movie ultimately about?
If you cannot bring yourself to admit that God is dead for the purposes of this class, then you will need to defend the antithesis.
And the thing is, that's one of many plots that happen in this movie. But in the interest of saving time and avoiding going all over the place, we really should just go over the main plot line between old Hercules and Josh Whedon. No, not that guy, Josh Whedon. And the main problem with this plot is that it is completely absurd and outrageous that something like this would happen at a college in the United States. I mean, if I paid to go to this class instead of learning about the course that I need to take for credits toward that degree, I would be absolutely pissed that this class turned into a gong show featuring a professor actively trying to bully a student over his religious beliefs, especially because someone's personal religious beliefs have nothing to do with the class. You ask any philosophy major or someone who's an expert in the field, and they'll tell you that such a course being ran the way the professor ran it in the movie would be seriously incomplete, and it does not represent at all what philosophy is, especially the historical philosophers from hundreds of years ago who had Christian influence. And again, it's 100% against our Constitution in our country to do something like Professor Radisson is forcing his students to do. Our First Amendment protects people like Josh to believe what they believe and for the professor to do the same thing. You're definitely allowed to express it, but by law, you're not allowed to force your beliefs or force people to say your beliefs. And in such a situation, any teacher or college professor in a government-funded public school that is stupid enough to use their classroom as a pulpit for atheism or even Christianity or Islam or Judaism or any other system of belief, they're going to lose their job. Full stop. I work for the city of Los Angeles in real life, and I am subject to the same city government rules regarding expression of religion while on duty. And if I was using my spot in the public eye as a government employee to talk about my Christian beliefs, I would definitely get in major trouble with my employer. And then, of course, a professor going out of his way to go after a student after class to flaunt his jockstrap size and tenure is grounds for the student to go to the administration and say, he's harassing me. This is literally how God's Not Dead should have gone. Josh goes to the university office, reports the syllabus, professor gets fired, and everyone but the professor rocks out at the Newsboys concert. The end. Plus, the professor probably wouldn't have gotten ran over by a car and then converted to Christianity in his dying breath. And to that I say,
nope.
Because I do believe that believers do get judged accordingly in the afterlife to what they did in their lives. I'm pretty sure that when he arrived at the pearly gates, the man upstairs would have said, well, you may have accepted me as your Lord and Savior in your dying breath, but in your life, for decades, you forced hundreds of students to renounce their faith in me and condemned many souls to where you are going in the process. So depart from me.
Why do you hate God?
Because he took everything away from me. Yes, I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
Plus, once that part happens, the movie pretty much reveals that the professor really wasn't an atheist, just someone mad at God. And the last time I checked, even if some atheists are ex-Christians, well, real atheists aren't really mad at God, nor do they hate God. So the person who's supposed to be your main antagonist in a Christian movie, where it's Christian good, atheist bad, it doesn't at all represent what an atheist is. And with that said, the whole premise behind the main plot between conservative Twitter warrior and not Josh Whedon just stems from the evangelical Christian belief that, oh, they're taking God out of our schools because of the elimination of school prayer and the push to remove the words under God out of the pledge, even though the words under God wasn't there originally and was added during the Cold War to differentiate us from those atheist commie bastards, as they would have said in the 50s. Because, oh, they're teaching evolution and the Big Bang instead of the Genesis account in an attempt to hide God. Well, if that was the case, our governments and schools are not doing a very good job of hiding God, considering the majority of American citizens still believe in a higher power and identify with the religion of their choice. And when it comes to the science behind evolutionary biology and cosmology, you cannot just say, well, God did it because it says so in Genesis as your answer, because the course has nothing to do with religion and is only going over what science and humans have learned about the aforementioned subjects. It's not that freaking hard. You can read the text, you can listen to the lectures, you can learn what they're saying, you can ace the test, write up your thesis, graduate, and then get a job in that field and still hold on to your spiritual beliefs as you choose. No one is forcing you to go away from your spiritual beliefs. And I know I've gotten off track here, but you should hopefully get the idea how absurd this premise is. And the fact that people will take what happens in this movie as gospel really just shows how ignorant many Christians can be. But oh, what about the legal cases listed in the credits that say this movie took inspiration from? Well, I guess the filmmakers all thought that Christians are stupid, that they don't know how to use Google and look up all those cases that were listed on an individual basis. Now, to save time, I'm not going to talk about all of them, so pause the video if you really want to read. But as it turns out, not a single one of them play out in any way like the film. Most of them don't even have to do with religion, but more about conservative political issues. And not one of them is a case of a Christian speech being suppressed or canceled for their beliefs. Instead, it's cases of Christians filing lawsuits against the school. These are Christians playing the victim card in attempts to get money for themselves and the Alliance Defending Freedom. Not a single one of them are cut and dry cases of Christians actually being mistreated for their beliefs. So not only is it a bad movie that goes all over the place, and not only does it have a plot line that is absurd that would never happen in a college university in the United States because of legal reasons, but the cases that they list have nothing to do with the movie. It turns out none of this is based on truth. My goodness! It seems if you were to look up fake Christian propaganda in the dictionary, it would say, "See, God's not dead." It's no wonder that many non-religious people look at this movie and laugh at how ridiculous it is. Even a lot of Christians would even agree that this movie did no favors for Christianity, and it probably turned more people away than converted. Christians want to know why there's a growing number of non-Christians in the US. It's partly because of stuff like this. And there's plenty more I could say about the first movie, but there's two more I gotta go over.
Accept the charge, because I have nothing but contempt for these proceedings.
God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's
The second movie stars everyone's favorite teenage witch who explains it all, Melissa Joan Hart. And what's the main plot for this movie?
Radical is its unwavering commitment to a nonviolent approach.
Isn't that sort of like what Jesus meant when he said that we should love our enemies?
Yes, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
One of your students sent a text to their parents. Did this happen?
If you're asking whether I responded to a student's question, yes.
And your answer incorporated the words of Jesus.
What were you thinking, Grace?
Trust me, they've been dreaming of a case like this.
We're going to prove once and for all that God is dead.
Now, like I said earlier, with the separation of church and state, one cannot use their classroom as a pulpit to preach their spiritual beliefs. So if there's going to be any references to any scriptures or religions or their influences, it has to be done in an academic way that in no way comes off as preaching, especially when you're answering a question.
Isn't that sort of like what Jesus meant when he said that we should love our enemies?
Yes. The writer of the Gospel of Matthew records Jesus as saying, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
I mean, Melissa Joan Hart even has a good expression where you show in her character that she's wondering if she could answer it or if she shouldn't. And then she goes ahead and answers it in an academic way that doesn't come off as preaching. Again, she's merely answering a question that was more related to Martin Luther King. After all, the man was a pastor who used biblical text and imagery in his speeches and sermons. Even his most famous ones, like the I Have a Dream speech, has allusions to the book of Psalms and the book of Isaiah, to name a couple. So you cannot go into a deep dive about Martin Luther King and his quotes without referencing the context and biblical scriptures they're based on. And again, you ask any non-Christian to view this clip and see if they think Grace's answer comes off as preaching, and they'll say, no, it's not. It's not worth any disciplinary action. She's not preaching or saying one religion is greater than the other. She's just answering a question and doing so in a historical context. Public school teachers are fully allowed to do this.
What were you thinking, Grace?
She's thinking that what she said was perfectly legal and any sane person would know this. And if she did indeed get fired, she should sue and win for wrongful termination. Then she can tithe that settlement money as much as she wants and then go vacation to the Bahamas. Or she can go vacation to Point Place, Wisconsin. And once again, just like the first movie, God's Not Dead manages to make up a scenario that would never happen in real life. Just to make a story about Christians being ratted on and punished for their beliefs because, oh, those angry atheists are at it again. I mean, we really do have to bring up how atheists are typically portrayed in the first two movies, so let's let these clips speak for themselves.
If you ask me, the religious extremists we need to worry about are the hardcore Christians.
You know what hate is, Tom? I'm not talking about the fairy tale stuff. I mean real hate. I hate what people like your clients stand for. We're going to prove once and for all that God is dead.
There is a God, and yet I'm him.
I have cancer.
This couldn't wait till tomorrow. Grow up, Amy.
Mina, this wine is awful.
But I actually believe in God.
It's a work in progress.
I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
It's just like the freaking Left Behind movies. Christians, good. Non-Christians, bad. The Christians are loving, tolerant, open-minded, and accepting people, while non-Christians are intolerant, ignorant, closed-minded, and nasty.
I hate God.
The thing is, in my life experience, it's been the other way around in many scenarios. I was bullied at a Christian school, and then as an astrophotographer, a telescope user, and science communicator, I sometimes have to deal with flat earthers and science deniers. Remember Jake Busey's character in Contact? Yeah, I've dealt with people like that. While the atheists I work with in real life who know I'm a Christian are completely fine with me, and we work together just fine. And the movie portrays the ACLU as these bad, evil people who are trying to persecute Christians, when a simple Google search will show you that there have been many legal cases where the ACLU came to the defense of Christians, including their rights to read the Bible in a public school. And just like the first movie, where a philosophy discussion turned into a debate over the existence of God becoming nothing to do with philosophy, the second movie takes a legal court case which turned into a fight for the existence of Jesus as a historical figure. It has nothing to do with the law of the land, which Grace clearly didn't break. And all BS aside, both of these movies were successful, they made plenty of money, and made their tribalistic target audience happy while getting critically panned by everyone else. And I know I've left out discussing a lot of the other side plots in detail, and that's simply because there's too many of them, and I can only keep your attention for so long.
Let love explode and bring the dead to life.
However, in the third movie, Pastor David Hill from the previous two films, played by David A.R. White, he takes the main lead. Even the people who downright hate these movies would argue that David A.R. White's character was the only good thing on a consistent basis. And the third movie is basically about Dave's church being threatened for removal by the college, whose land the church is surrounded by, and them trying to force them out via eminent domain laws. Now, one must wonder, what's the inspiration behind this scenario? Well, you have a story of 5 pastors in Texas who were issued subpoenas for sermons due to potential violation of the Johnson Amendment, which prevents nonprofit organizations such as charities and churches from endorsing political candidates, or else doing so will lose their tax-exempt status. In reality, the subpoenas in question were soon dropped, and since 2008, only one evangelical pastor out of over 2,000 has been caught deliberately violating the law, and has got audited but not punished. And yes, if you go to any church, the political bias between conservative and liberal will be very obvious among the congregation, especially if you happen to stumble on a church where there's gay flags on display or the minister has rainbows on his robes. But as long as they're not using their sermons to say, vote for Biden because Orange Man bad, or let's go Brandon, MAGA, FTW, they can do as they wish. And here's the thing. When a church is privately owned, as is the land, then public universities can't get the church nearby removed. Or if they're going to try eminent domain, then they need to properly compensate the church and can only give orders to demolish the place after the ownership of that land has changed and the transactions are final. It would also be very bad business for the college in question to remove a church for the sake of removing it, as they have students coming from all over to live in or near the campus, and many of them need a place nearby to freely worship and practice their religion of choice, whether it's attending mass, church, synagogues, mosque, temple, etc. So yes, in that respect, G's Not Dead 3D definitely does have the same persecution complex. Let's face it, it's well known that many Christians do not like that academia has been way more secularized, and they also despise the fact that creationism is not allowed to be taught in public schools anymore. So in the case of the first 2 movies, you can see where they're coming from. eminent domain? It's almost like they're pulling at straws to come up with something to say, see, this is what they're doing to us. But does that mean the third movie gets everything wrong? No. Actually, there are some good things about the third movie when it comes to the characters. One, the movie has the guts to kill off Dave's best friend near the beginning, which sets the main eminent domain plot into motion, making Dave have to seek legal help from his estranged atheist brother played by John Corbett. The interactions between the two brothers are a breath of fresh air, as is the portrayal of other non-Christians in the movie, including one who threw a brick into the church but then learns from his mistakes. Plus, there's an agnostic girl who is assured by the main character from the first movie that it's okay to question the existence of God.
It's good to ask difficult questions. God can use it. He's not afraid of your uncertainty.
There are even some moments where our characters talk about how badly they were treated by the people within the church.
Do you know why my mom divorced my dad? He used to beat her. You know what our church did? They called her a sinner. They said that if she married again, she'd be an adulterer. They humiliated her.
You didn't take the time to understand what I was going through. I was trying to sort out my own faith, my own sense of God. I was changing, and you all hated me for it. And that's the truth, David.
Almost as if to say the church is not always the most accepting, non-judgmental place.
No offense, but maybe you'd understand a little better if you were the one being attacked.
Brother, who do you think you're talking to? I'm a black preacher in the deep south. I could build you a church with all the bricks been thrown through my windows.
Oh, that runs deep. You can't tell me there isn't any challenging substance with that line, given the history of our country and racism that, yes, does still exist. The movie also doesn't end in the same heavy-handed pro-evangelical, anti-secular way the other two ended. This time, Dave actually allows his church to be given to the university and advocates for a more peaceful, forgiving brand of Christianity. So yes, it may certainly have some of the same tropes as the previous films, but at least this one is more human about it. It gets into the topics of redemption, forgiveness, remorse, and it feels more genuine in discussions about faith. And it doesn't shy away from people talking about very real reasons why they leave the faith or the church. So even though the actual eminent domain plot isn't based in reality, the side topics it went over were definitely real. And it seemed like the third movie finally got things going in the right direction to make a movie about Christianity seem real, down to earth, and compelling. And of course, that meant the third movie is the only one that bombed out of the original trilogy. Even its own target audience seemed to dismiss it by calling it a cash grab and saying it doesn't promote a Christian message. Because of course they say that. Even though it's the only one that actually promotes a true Christian message, the fact that this performed much worse than the first two really speaks volumes about the state of the audience that it's targeting. I guess they'd rather see mean atheists get ran over by cars. It seems the targeted audience doesn't want to have a discussion. These people went to the first G&D movies because they wanted to have their pre-existing non-reality based beliefs and prejudices parroted back to them. But when this one dared to actually challenge the Christian faith just a little bit and get a little more genuine, of course they get offended. They'd rather stick to Christians good, everyone else bad. And then they wonder why there's an increasing sense of tribalism, this us versus them mentality, and people taking sides of the extreme, and then wondering, well, why is the other side so intolerant? Are there examples of intolerant Christian assholes? Or examples of immature atheist douchebags? Of course there are. There certainly are people from both extremes that want to pick fights with the other side because of ideology reasons. And to that I say, go ahead. As long as it's away from everybody else, go fight it out. Because everyone else would rather just live their lives in peace without conflict. The thing is, we can get along. We can coexist. We can talk about our differences and still find common ground and come to a loving, respectful relationship between each other, especially if your family members, friends, or work colleagues do not share the exact same spiritual beliefs you do. And that is pretty much all I have to say. Now, when the idea was pitched to me to tackle the God's Not Dead movies, I thought it was just a trilogy. I mean, there was no reason to make a fourth one after the third movie bombed so hard, right? Right? Well, little did I know that another one, titled We the People, came out in 2021, and a fifth movie, subtitled Rise Up, is scheduled to be released later in 2024 as of this recording. Now, I have already done enough talking about the first three GND movies, so I think it is best to wait until the fifth GND movie comes out, and then I can make a separate rant about the final two. And if you enjoyed listening, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the Burgers and Fries Discord server if you want to speak to me directly or potentially be on a future podcast episode. And what will the sixth movie be subtitled? Tokyo Drift? Revenge of Professor Radisson? A Woke Tale? Oh, I got it. Maybe it should be subtitled The Preacher's Son, the Wife, and the Pool Boy. I'm Desert Coyote 22. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Scotty. Jesus, man.